Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Fabulous Concert Programs number 116, and we're still working on the Glazunov Cycle, including not just the 8 symphonies, but also other major works of symphonic length. And we've already done the ballet, The Seasons, which is a perfect 40-minute long, effectively a dance symphony. I mean, Ravel called Daphnis and Chloe the Symphonie Chorégraphique. If Glazunov had called The Seasons the same thing, nobody would argue. And today, we're going to talk about his other similarly lengthy ballet, Les Ruses d'Amour. Oh, it's the deceptions of love. It's so delightful and delicious, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, we have to do the first half. And one of the things I've been trying to do in these programs is show where Glazunov fits in the continuum of great Western music and how he deserves to be there because he's a great composer. So often with a composer like Glazunov, you will see him defined by what he is not. He's not Brahms. He's not Tchaikovsky. He's not this. He's not that. That's true. He's not any of those people. He's Glazunov. What they don't discuss is what he is, what he does superbly well, and the wonderful qualities that he has. Now, this particular program is a neoclassical program in many respects. We begin in the first half with Richard Strauss, his dance suite on keyboard pieces by François Couperin. How many people know this work of Strauss? He actually did 2 sets of Couperin works. He orchestrated them for a ballet, which eventually became, in the 1940s, Verklugene Feste, whatever that thing was called. The, sort of like, bygone festivals or something like that. It was all very fin de siècle and decadent, even though he was 40 years past the fin of the siècle. But the dance suite on pieces by Couperin is delicious. I mean, they're Couperin pieces. He diddled them. He combined some of them. He added codas to a couple of them. It lasts 25 minutes or so, half an hour, somewhere in there. It's just a lovely, lovely Baroque confection and a labor of love in orchestrating these works. And so it's a wonderful way to begin this series of works based on the neoclassical concept. And so we begin with the dance suite, and you'll love it. And if you don't know it, you really should hear it. It's beautiful. It's just delightful. Next, we have Estonian composer Aino Tamberg, who passed away just a couple of years ago. His Concerto Grosso. Now, this is one of the great neoclassical works in the repertoire. Most people don't know it at all. It's scored for an orchestra of strings with piano and then a wind quintet that includes a saxophone and plenty of percussion to spice things up. Really, really delicious music, full of good tunes and saucy rhythms. It's just marvelous. If you don't know this work, you really should. And it's fun to do something from Estonia because we're talking about in the same general sphere of influence as Russian music, although Tamberg, since he just died a couple of years ago, was obviously a 20th century composer and a very, very good one. His music is barely known, but it's just lovely. So that's the first half. You've got a literal orchestration of Baroque music, and then you have a very modern saxophones and percussion and stuff, reworking of the Concerto Grosso concept, which is, a work that has many solos, basically, as opposed to a standard large ensemble, in this case, the strings and, like timpani, but everybody else is like soloing along, and it's just delicious. I love that work. So then we have the intermission. Then after the intermission comes Les Ruses d'Amour. Now, Les Ruses d'Amour, or sometimes it's called Lady Soubrette. I have no idea why, but I've seen it called that. So you may see it, but that's not what it is. It's Les Ruses d'Amour or Ruse d'Amour. It's a plot that's very, very well known. It's about a guy who goes to marry an aristocratic girl who he's never met. And so she decides to test him by dressing up as her maid, and her maid dresses up in her. They go through a series of, misadventures together, all of them, but he passes the test. He never wavers in his devotion to the object of his betrothal. And so it all works out in the end. Now, this takes place in the French Rococo period. That's the setting. So the music is not like Richard Strauss, a literal orchestration or version of French Baroque music, nor is it a 20th century reimagining of the Concerto Grosso concept. It's a romantic stage work set in a particular era with music that's supposed to evoke that era, but which is entirely typical of Glazunov, of the Romantic period, the Russian ballet school, which is part of the French ballet school. They're really a unit, and it's delightful. I mean, it has a fabulous grand waltz and great extended numbers, and it ends with something called a fricassee. And the fricassee has a tune that is every bit as wonderful as the bacchanal in autumn from the Seasons. It's just phenomenal. It's bum ba da 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 ya da 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 bum ba da 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 da. I mean, it'll get stuck in your head, believe me, forever. The piece is 50 minutes long. In most, there are only like 2 recordings of it. It should be recorded more often. It really should. But there have been a couple recordings, and they last about 50 minutes. So it's of meaty symphonic length, but it's not overly long or difficult or anything like that. And it comes in defined sections. So there's about like a dozen of them, and it's just one of the great romantic ballets. All of Glazunov's ballets, by the way, were written at the very, very end of the 19th century. They're almost a summation of all that is most wonderful about that whole classical ballet school. First was Raimonda, then this one, which was like 1898, and then the Seasons, which was around 1899. Although this one wasn't performed until 1900, but it's that kind of capping of a tradition. I mean, we give Bach credit for summarizing the Baroque tradition in works like the B minor Mass, and we regard that very highly. Well, Glazunov was summarizing the Russian ballet tradition in works of absolute mastery. I mean, he's a genius at writing this kind of music. And it's charming, and it's crisp, and it's elegant, and it works wonderfully with the other pieces on the program, all of which have their own unique slant on this idea of neoclassical, neo-Baroque, neo-Rococo, this kind of period anachronistic music, but reimagined in contemporary style. So I think this is just a marvelous program that you'll never in your life hear live in a concert, but you should play it at home and think about how each composer approaches this ideal, the ideal of music of a bygone era in their own way, in their own style, with their own technique. And Glazunov belongs with all of them and does not suffer by comparison. And that's the point. Put this music in the right context. It needs no apology. None at all. So I'm not apologizing. I'm just asking you to give it a listen. Trust me, you're going to love it. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.